A week after my son Matthew got married, my daughter-in-law Brooke knocked on my door, accompanied by a well-dressed man carrying a leather briefcase. "Mom, this is Paul, a notary." She flashed that phony smile I knew too well. "We're here to help you with some house paperwork." My heart pounded. I knew exactly what they wanted, but they had no idea what I had quietly prepared over the past few months. Thank God I had kept quiet about the ranch assets my late husband left me in his will. Watching Brooke flip through my documents with greedy eyes, I realized silence had been my shield. But to tell it fully, I have to go back to the day everything began to change. 3 months earlier, when Matthew told me he was going to marry Brooke, I was kneading dough in the kitchen. The smell of fresh yeast filled the room while my hands pressed into the warm dough. "Mom, I want you to really understand, Brooke. Before the wedding," Matthew said with that smile that always softened my heart. "My son, my only treasure, has finally found love," I replied, wiping my hands on the apron. I'd heard plenty about her. 32 years old, office job, brown hair, always sleek, perfectly manicured nails. She sounded like the perfect woman for Matthew. That afternoon, I ran to the supermarket to pick the freshest things. Large shrimp, perfectly ripe avocados, herbs, heavy cream. I wanted to cook the dishes Matthew had loved since he was little. In my head, I imagined the conversations I'd have with Brooke, the advice to keep my son happy, the family recipes the two of us might share. I stayed up nearly all night cooking. My feet swelled from standing so long, but I didn't care. The clam chowder I made was silky and rich. The cornbread was fluffy. The avocado salad was refreshing. The apple pie was fragrant with cinnamon. American dishes my family has always loved. When it was time to meet, I put on my prettiest pink dress, the one I saved for special occasions. I did my hair carefully and even put on a little lipstick. I wanted to make a good first impression, after all. This woman might be the mother of my future grandchildren. The doorbell rang, and my heart leapt. I opened the door with a wide smile. "Brooke, it's so nice to meet you." I opened my arms for a hug, but she only brushed my shoulders with her fingertips as if touching me were unpleasant. "Nice to meet you, ma'am," she murmured without looking me in the eyes. Her voice was cold and distant. She wore an elegant green dress, and her high heels clacked on the floor of my modest home like tiny hammers. During dinner, I tried to chat about her interests, her job, her plans with Matthew, but every question I asked got clipped one-word answers. Yes, no, maybe. Talking to her felt like talking to an ice wall. What hurt me most was the way her eyes swept around my house with disdain, the way she wrinkled her nose when tasting my food as if it were something inferior. Matthew tried to smooth it over. "Mom, the food is delicious as always," he said, trying to dispel the awkwardness, blanketing the table. Brooke poked at the beans on her plate with her fork, separating each ingredient as if dodging poison. Her glossy red nails contrasted completely with my simple ceramic dishes. "Do you like cooking, Brooke?" I asked with a hint of hope, pouring more sauce onto her plate. She looked up, her expression hard to read. "I don't have time for that," she answered flatly. "I prefer ordering in or going to proper restaurants." The word proper stabbed my chest like a splinter, so my food wasn't proper. My home wasn't proper either. Matthew cleared his throat and hurried to change the subject, but I'd already gotten the message. To Brooke, everything of mine was beneath her. In the following weeks, each visit grew heavier. She perched on the edge of the couch as if she'd get dirty, eyes glued to her phone with a bored expression. She never asked about my day. She never showed any interest in truly getting to know me. "Mom, Suzanne, you'll be happy to have more time for yourself after we get married, right?" She dropped one day while I was making coffee. It sounded like an early goodbye, as if she'd already decided to separate Matthew from me. "More time for myself," I repeated, confused. "I like being with you too." She glanced at Matthew, the look I didn't understand then, but understand all too well now. They were already planning to sideline me. Wedding prep turned into my personal nightmare. Brooke decided everything without asking me, as if I were invisible. "Have the cleaning lady help with the flowers," I heard her say on the phone one time. It took me a few seconds to realize she meant me, the one who usually tidied up and cooked whenever my son visited. When I offered to bake the wedding cake myself, a family tradition we'd kept for generations, Brooke let out a laugh that chilled my blood. "Oh no, Mom! Let the professionals handle that. I don't want anything homemade." That night, I sat in the kitchen and cried, clutching the apron my own mother gave me when I got married. My cakes had sweetened birthdays, baptisms, graduations. But to Brooke, the love in every batch was just homemade, a word she pronounced like a disease. The wedding day arrived like an unavoidable storm. I got up before dawn to get ready, choosing my most elegant purple dress. I'd bought it just for this occasion. I stopped by the neighborhood salon. Carol gave me a hairstyle so pretty I looked 10 years younger. "You look beautiful, Suzanne," she said while adjusting my hair. "Your son will be so proud." Her words lit a small hope. Maybe today would be a new beginning with Brooke. I arrived at the church early, the way I always arrive early everywhere. I wanted to make sure everything was perfect for my son. Guests began to arrive and I received their congratulations with a genuine smile. But when the ceremony began, I realized something that broke my heart. Brooke had arranged the seating, so I was pushed to the 5th row behind her coworkers, behind neighbors who had only met Matthew a few times, while the groom's mother sat way in the back like a stranger. From that row, I had to crane my neck to see my own son walk up the aisle. The mothers of Brooke's friends, women who had never stayed up a night with Matthew's fever, had better seats than I did. I swallowed hard and kept my composure, but something inside me cracked. At the reception, it got worse. Brooke introduced me to her guests as Matthew's mom, never using my name or saying mother-in-law respectfully. "She cooks really well," she added with that fake smile, compressing my entire life into a kitchen function. When it was time for toasts, I waited patiently. I'd prepared heartfelt words about my dear friend's son, about watching him grow, about my blessings for his new life. But Brooke conducted things like an orchestra director, calling on her parents, her siblings, her best friends, even coworkers. "What about the groom's mother's toast?" someone asked. Brooke glanced my way and smiled icily. "Oh yes, Miss Suzanne can say a few short words." Short. As if my 69 years of life and 30 years of motherhood were worth only a few lines. I stood up, legs trembling, feeling every gaze on me. "I want to thank God for this special day." I had barely reached the second sentence when Brooke started clapping, cutting me off. Others followed, and my voice was swallowed by the forced applause. For dinner, they seated me at a back table with Brooke's distant relatives, people who chatted among themselves as if I didn't exist. From there, I watched Matthew laugh with his new family, absorbed in his new life, while I chewed a piece of chicken as bland as cardboard. When the dancing started, Matthew danced with Brooke, then with her mother, then with her sisters. I sat still, smoothing my dress, trying to keep my smile from fading. The song ended, and my son never looked my way. "Not dancing with your mom, Matthew?" Anthony, Rachel's husband and a close family friend, asked as he stopped to say hello. Matthew laughed awkwardly. "In a bit." But in a bit never came. Close to 11 p.m. I decided to say goodbye. I had to drive home and was tired of pretending everything was fine. "Son, I'm going to head out." I touched his arm lightly. He hugged me quickly, eyes already following the music and laughter. "Thanks for everything, Mom. I love you," but he was looking elsewhere. Brooke appeared beside him like a possessive shadow. "Thanks for coming, Mom," she said. Her tone sounded more like a permanent farewell than gratitude. I walked to the parking lot, holding my purse and the gift I'd prepared. With so much love behind me, I heard Brooke whisper to her friends, "Good thing she lives far away. She's not a bad person, but you know how mothers-in-law are always wanting to have a say in everything." Their giggles followed me all the way to my car. I got into my old car, hands shaking, eyes brimming with tears. For 30 years, I was the center of Matthew's world. And in a single night, I became a nuisance to be gotten rid of. The drive home felt endless. Highway lights blurred through the tears. I finally let fall. A love song played on the radio, reminding me of dancing with my husband at our own wedding, the day he promised to always protect me. But now I face this new reality alone. I got home after midnight, feet swollen, heart shattered. I took off my shoes at the door and walked barefoot to my room, feeling the cold floor against my tired soles. The next morning, when Brooke and that so-called notary showed up at my door to help me with the house paperwork, I simply smiled. They didn't know that this Suzanne, a 69-year-old mother in Seattle, the next
was
days
no
were
longer
a
someone
strange
to be
mix
led
of
around,
silence and waiting.
and the real story was
I
only
hoped
just beginning.
Matthew would call to tell me
The
about
purple
the
dress I
honeymoon,
had so carefully
to check
chosen
on me,
suddenly
to
felt
keep the bond that
ridiculous,
had held for
like
30
a uniform
years,
for an old
but
woman
my phone
pretending
stayed
she
dead
still
quiet.
mattered. A week after the wedding, I decided to call myself.
"Hi, son. How are you two? Was the honeymoon good?" I tried to sound as cheerful as I could. His answer was icy. "Great, Mom. Brooke sends her regards. I'll call you later. We're busy sorting out the house stuff."
The house. He didn't say our house or my house.
Just the house. As if I had never existed in his family world, I hung up, lonelier than ever, looking at the photos of little Matthew all over the living room. The bright-eyed boy who would run to hug me every time he came home from school. Now he was a stranger sending regards through his wife. 3 more days passed with no news. I decided to bake a batch of chocolate walnut cookies, his childhood favorite, as an excuse to visit. I dressed neatly, put on my favorite mint green blouse, and drove to the new house in Bellevue with my heart full of hope.
I rang the bell, hoping to see my son smile.
But Brooke opened the door. She was wearing a wine-cold silk robe that looked expensive, her hair in a perfect bun, as if she'd just left the salon.
"Oh, Mom, what a surprise,"
she said without a shred of genuine joy. "I brought cookies for Matthew." I held up the gift basket tied with a yellow bow, his favorite.
Brooke took the basket without inviting me in, inspecting the cookies like evidence of a crime.
How thoughtful. "Matthew is in a very important meeting."
"I'll let him know."
I stood right at the threshold, feeling like a rejected salesperson, waiting for at least a glass of water or a simple "How are you?" But Brooke was already closing the door. "Thanks for the cookies, Mom. Have a nice day." The slam door sounded like a verdict. On the way back, tears blurred the windshield. I pulled over to cry freely, pounding my wrinkled fists on the steering wheel. How had I let it get to this? How could I let that woman so easily snatch my son away from me? That night, eating dinner alone in front of the TV, I suddenly remembered what my late husband told me before he passed. "Suzanne, if anything happens to me, don't let anyone trample you. You're stronger than you think, and you have more than you imagine." I hadn't fully understood then, but now those words began to come clear. The next morning I did what I'd neglected for months. I pulled out the safe from the closet, opened it, and organized the 7 papers: birth certificates, marriage certificate, house title, insurance policies. Then I saw an envelope that would change everything. The deed to a ranch of about 500 acres that my husband had inherited from his uncle, and that now belonged entirely to me, a ranch in eastern Washington. The legal language was very clear. I was the sole owner of one of the region's most profitable ranches. My heart pounded as I read the details: farmland, cattle, a main house with 5 bedrooms, and 3 houses for workers, guests. The most recent appraisal was enough for me to live comfortably for the rest of my life and still leave a substantial inheritance. But more important than money was power. The power to decide my own future, to depend on no one, to stop begging for affection or picking up scraps of attention. For the first time in weeks, I truly smiled. I put the documents somewhere safe and made a decision. I would tell no one about these assets. Not Matthew, and certainly not Brooke. My gut told me this would be my ace up the sleeve, my lifeline when the time came, and that very week, my instincts proved more accurate than I imagined. Brooke started calling me constantly, but not to check on me or invite me to dinner. Her calls had a very specific purpose: to mine for information about my house and finances. "Mom, Suzanne, Matthew and I think you might be more comfortable in a smaller place," she cooed. "This house must be a lot of responsibility for someone your age. Have you thought about selling and moving to an easier-to-manage apartment?" Her words gave me chills.
The subtlety of suggesting I get rid of my home was frightening.
"No, I'm very comfortable here.
I kept my voice gentle. This house holds too many beautiful memories.
Sure, but think it over. If you sell, you could enjoy yourself. Maybe travel. We can also help you manage the money so it earns more. Brooke continued in that syrupy tone I'd begun to hate. 2 days later, Matthew came by for the first time since the wedding. Not just to visit his mother, but with a very clear agenda. He sat on the sofa where I used to hold him when he had nightmares.
Mom, Brooke and I have been talking about your future. My future.
I feigned innocence, though I already knew where this was going. Matthew avoided looking me in the eye, just like when he was little and had done something wrong. We think this house is too big for you. Lately, you seem tired, stressed.
Brooke knows a great agent who can appraise it and get a good price.
He fidgeted with his car keys, awkward. The pain hit like a knife twisting in my chest. The very child I'd raised with all my love was trying to convince me to sell the house where he grew up, where he took his first steps, where we built every memory. Son, do you really think I should sell the house? I asked directly, needing to hear his voice, not Brooke's echo. For a moment, I saw the round, vulnerable little boy. He used to be hesitating, caught between what he knew was wrong and what his wife had put in his head. Well, Brooke has a point, Mom. You should enjoy more, worry less, he muttered. But his voice sounded like he was reading a script someone else had written. That evening, after Matthew left with empty promises to visit more often, I sat in the kitchen with a cup of chamomile tea and made a decision that would change everything. I called Rachel, the only close friend I could trust completely.
Rachel, I have to tell you something very important, but promise it stays between us.
Rachel's voice turned serious immediately. We've been friends for more than 40 years, practically raising our kids together. Okay, Suzanne, what's going on? You sound worried. I told her everything from Brooke's attitude the first time, how they treated me at the wedding, the attempts to convince me to sell the house, and finally the ranch assets I'd kept hidden. My God, Suzanne. Nearly 500 acres and you haven't told them, Rachel exclaimed. Good thing you kept quiet. I saw the shark look in that girl's eyes at the wedding. Her words confirmed my instincts were right. Rachel, I feel like something bad is coming. The way they look at me like an obstacle to remove. I'm afraid they're plotting. Listen thus, friend, Rachel said in her familiar firm tone. Tomorrow morning, we're going to see a lawyer. You need to protect everything before those vultures find out what you really have. And please don't sign anything without checking with me. The next morning, Rachel picked me up early. She had made an appointment with a reputable attorney, Mr. Robert Hayes, whose office was in downtown Seattle, a gray-haired man with sharp eyes and decades of handling similar cases. Miss Suzanne, based on what your friend said in the files I've reviewed, your situation is very faceted, he said after going through the papers. It's not uncommon for relatives, well-meaning or not, to pressure older adults to transfer assets. My recommendation is to build legal safeguards around your entire estate. Mr. Hayes spread the documents into a picture of assets on the polished wooden desk. What you have is substantial. This ranch alone equals the entire wealth of many families. He adjusted his glasses. What concerns me is the behavioral pattern you've described. Emotional isolation. Making the victim believe she's incapable. Then presenting the solution which only benefits them. His words made me shiver. This was exactly what I was living through. Rachel squeezed my hand. Tell him about the notary. I recounted how Brooke brought Paul to my door, waving house papers, showing up unannounced like hunters on a trail. Classic, the lawyer muttered, taking notes. They often bring along a friendly witness notary. Overlook irregularities and pressure for signatures under the pretense of simplifying procedures. I've seen people lose everything in a single signing session. So, what can I do to protect myself? I asked, feeling like I was standing in the middle of an invisible battlefield. For the first time that day, he smiled. A lot. We'll set up an irrevocable trust, document any coercive attempts, and most importantly, prepare scripts for when they show their true intentions. We left the law office with a clear plan and a set of documents strong enough to wrap my estate in protection. This time, I was no longer a mother easily led around.
Suzanne of Seattle was ready to fight back.
More important than anything, I walked out of the law office with one certainty.
I wasn't overreacting or paranoid. My suspicions had a basis. Rachel invited me over for a meal.
Her husband, Anthony, hugged me with his familiar bear hug.
Suzanne, that girl has money in her eyes,
Anthony said as we ate the pot roast Rachel had cooked. Even at the wedding, I felt something off, he continued. She kept calculating, probing about who did what business.
Their observations confirmed my worst fears.
In the following days, I kept my normal routine, but on high alert.
Every call, every unexpected visit, every casual remark about age or needing help, I read in a new way.
It was as if I'd suddenly developed X-ray vision to see the true intentions.
On
Mom.
Wednesday afternoon,
Matthew
while I was
forced a
watering the
smile.
garden,
The
I
smile
saw
he had
Matthew's
practiced
car pull
since
in.
getting married.
My heart
Brooke
raced,
followed,
not with joy
carrying
anymore,
a
but
thick
with
folder
anxiety.
radiating a smugness
When he got
that
out
made
of
my
the car
skin
with
crawl.
Brooke,
I knew the
"Let us come
moment I
in."
feared most had
We
arrived.
want to discuss something important with. I invited them to sit in the living room.
The very place where Matthew had played with toy cars for hours. Where I read him stories every night, where we watched cartoons together.
Now that sacred space had turned into a courtroom, and I was the defendant. "Mom, we're very worried about you," Matthew began in a strange, patronizing tone. "Brooke and I think you need support managing your finances. At your age, feeling overwhelmed by many responsibilities is normal." Brooke opened the folder like a commander unfolding battle maps.
Mom, Suzanne, we've consulted a few financial specialists for older adults.
Everyone says the best thing is to simplify the assets, concentrating everything in safer, easier to manage options. "Which specialists?" I asked, feigning confusion while my blood boiled inside. Why is it that I haven't spoken to any specialists at all? I recorded every word, every gesture, exactly as attorney Robert Hayes had advised. Matthew jumped in using that patient tone people use with children. "Exactly, because you haven't had proper advice. Brooke knows highly qualified people who can help you protect your money and secure your future." Brooke pulled out a stack of papers and spread them on the table like a hand of cards.
"Take a look. This is a very convenient proposal.
An investment fund with guaranteed returns. Better than letting money sit in real estate that takes maintenance and causes headaches." I pretended to scrutinize with the tired eyes of a confused old woman, but in fact I was memorizing every detail. The document said, "Sell my house, then transfer the money into a joint account so Matthew and Brooke
would have decision-making power over the portfolio to protect me from potential scams."
"If I sell the house, where would I live?" I asked, my voice trembling exactly the way they expected from a fragile grandma. Brooke smiled with that well-polished fake sweetness. "Oh, Mom, don't worry.
We found a very nice assisted living. A senior care center with medical care 247. You'd be much safer and more comfortable there. A nursing home." The words rang in my head like funeral bells.
There was the plan. Strip me of my house.
Seize the money.
Lock me away somewhere I wouldn't be in their way.
All wrapped in glossy paper labeled concern.
"A nursing home," I repeated, letting my voice waver a little. "But son, I'm fine in my own home." This is where our memories are. Brooke and Matthew
exchanged that conspiratorial glance. I had learned to recognize the silent language of schemers.
"Mom, we know it's hard, but think it through." Matthew leaned in, offering a benevolent smile. "There you'd have friends, activities, doctors, and we could stop by whenever we want without worrying about your safety. Whenever we want. Not every day. Not regularly when convenient, like visiting a boarded pet."
The anger rose so high I had to rein in my performance as a frail old lady.
Brooke pulled out more papers. "We've run the numbers. Sell the house, plus a few smart investments,
and you'll live very comfortably without having to worry about anything.
We'll handle all the paperwork and make the financial decisions." The final trap came into focus. They would hold the reins of my money while I withered in a facility living on crumbs of attention. A brilliantly cruel plan executed with the precision of financial surgeons. "What if I don't want to sell?" I asked softly, as if the thought had just occurred to me. Brooke sighed theatrically, like a patient teacher explaining math to a slow child. "Mom,
we understand it's hard, but at your age, Living alone in such a big house isn't safe. What if you fall and no one knows?
Or if someone takes advantage of your kindness and scams you? The irony being lectured about scammers by the person trying to scam.
I need time to think. I need time to think.
I rubbed my temples as if I had a headache.
It's a lot to process at once. Matthew stood and hugged me. A hug as cold as Judas's kiss rather than a son's affection.
Of course, Mom, but don't take too long, he said.
Brooke stacked the documents with the satisfaction of someone who thinks she's already won. After they left,
I collapsed into a chair, feeling as if I just survived a hurricane.
my hands shook,
Not from age, but from fury held in.
I picked up the phone and called attorney Robert Hayes immediately. Mr. Hayes, they just came.
Exactly as you predicted. They want me to sell everything, put me in a facility, and take over the money.
His voice was calm but firm.
Miss Suzanne, this is the critical part.
Do not sign anything at all, no matter how much pressure they apply.
If possible, record all future conversations. We need to document their true intent. That night, I couldn't sleep.
I walked around the house like a ghost, touching each object with a story.
The rocking chair where I nursed Matthew, the table where we did homework together,
the piano I played to lull him through nightmares.
All of it would be sold off and scattered to feed the greed of someone who came later.
Who knew nothing of the days when Matthew was most vulnerable and needed his mother.
A person who saw motherly love only as an obstacle on the road to a money dream. The next morning,
Rachel arrived early with a digital voice recorder her grandchild had lent her. It's really easy to use, she showed me.
Press this button and it records for 8 hours straight.
Slip it in your purse or apron pocket.
If they come back with proposals, we'll have their words.
For 3 days, I kept a tense calm, waiting for the hunter's next move.
On Friday afternoon, the phone rang.
Brooke, her voice sugary with manipulation.
Have you thought about the proposal, Mom?
We found a beautiful place in assisted living, but we need to reserve soon because there's a wait list. The fake urgency in her voice confirmed they were eager to close early before I could consult anyone.
Yes, I've thought a lot, I answered with my best performance as a hesitant old lady.
Can you come by tomorrow to explain the details again?
At my age, I sometimes forget.
I could practically see her triumphant smile through the phone.
Yes, Mom. Tomorrow afternoon we'll bring all the paperwork.
You'll see. This is the best decision for everyone.
Best for everyone.
As if being stripped of my home and freedom were a favor to me. On Saturday afternoon, they arrived right on time, like vultures keeping a date with carrion.
This time they brought Paul the notary who had shown up at my door the previous week. A thin man with a sparse mustache and a leather briefcase. His eyes roving around my house like an appraiser's while he feigned courtesy. Miss Suzanne, very pleased to see you again. He smiled without his eyes. I'm prepared to streamline all procedures.
The faster we resolve this, the fewer complications. Before we begin,
I'd like permission to audio-video record this discussion to protect all parties.
Does everyone agree? I sat down in my favorite armchair, the one where I used to rock baby Matthew, and let them stage their show of fake concern.
Mom, we brought the paperwork ready.
Matthew laid the sheets on the table. You just need to sign here, here, and we'll handle the rest. His finger pointed at dotted lines like crosses in a graveyard.
Brooke sat right next to me. The kind of hard sell proximity used by aggressive salespeople. Look.
Photos of where you'll live, lovely gardens, a TV room, even yoga classes for seniors.
Brooke showed a few pictures.
A place that looked more like a hospital in disguise than a home. Paul opened his briefcase and ceremoniously pulled out a seal, blue ink, and a set of notary letterhead forms.
Ma'am, these documents are drafted perfectly to protect your interests. A property sale, fund transfer into a family trust.
And authorization for relatives to manage your finances if you become
incapacitated. Incapacitated. The word hit me like a slap. I smiled very slightly, a smile only I understood, and looked up. Then let's start by reading aloud each clause. So the audio-video record captures everything in full as required.
Shall we? They had even prepared the next step.
If one day I dared to oppose their decisions, they'd try to have me declared cognitively incompetent. The plan was so meticulous it gave me chills. What if later on I changed my mind?
I asked on purpose, my voice shaking, playing the role of a dirty old woman to perfection.
Paul and Brooke exchanged a look, the kind the recorder couldn't capture. But I etched it into my memory as proof of their collusion.
Oh, Mom.
These decisions are meant to be final for your own protection,
Brooke said with exaggerated patience.
If you could change your mind all the time,
bad actors could take advantage and trick you into signing things that aren't good for you. Bad actors.
How ironic.
The very person stripping me of everything was preaching about people who take advantage.
I had to bite my tongue not to laugh bitterly. And also, Mom, Matthew held my hand with an artificially gentle touch. Think how much peace of mind we'll have knowing you're safe and cared for.
We won't have to worry about you anymore. Won't have to worry about you anymore. Translated from the language of manipulators, it means we won't have to pretend to love you once we control the money.
My tears burst out. Not an act anymore. It was the real pain of a mother betrayed by the child she had lovingly raised.
Don't cry, ma'am. Paul soothed with professional coldness. Feeling emotional during major changes is normal. You'll feel more at peace afterward.